All right. So there is this one thing I want to show us, and I'm going to tell us how to solve that problem. And that's if you hit Control N or you come to this new, click on new. This is what you're going to have. This is the dialog box you're going to get when you click on new. In your own case too, this is what you're going to get. And the reason is because you just installed it afresh. So it has been set by default to start a new drawing from template. That's what the setting is. But you can actually change it. Remember in the first class when we were talking about the slide, AutoCAD slide, I said AutoCAD allows standards, so you can use your metric standard, imperial standards. But now this is just only giving us templates, and it doesn't say whether we are using metric or imperial. By just choosing the template. So how can we set it such that anytime we're hitting Control N or new, it's not going to come to this. It's going to come to that page that asks us to choose a template, to choose a standard we want to use. All right. So what we're going to do is in our command line bar, I'll just type this. You have a question. Okay. So metric is standard for the meters, millimeters, centimeters. Imperials is for feet and inch. Feet and inch, imperial. Yes, the GIC standard. And the metric is for the meters, millimeters, centimeters, kilometers. So for me to change that, I'll come to my command line bar. I'll type this startup, one word, no space. I'll just type it together, start up, and I press enter. Then it's going to bring a prompt. It tells me that enter a new value for startup. Inside the bracket, you notice there is a value there, 3. I remember on Wednesday we talked about the two different brackets you're going to have. So in this kind of bracket, it's giving you a default value. So this is the default value that AutoCAD puts inside the startup. That's why it's bringing up that starting from template. So we want to change it. So what I'm going to do is I don't want to accept this. So I'm not pressing enter. I want to override it. So I'll just type 1. Once I type 1 and I press enter, it goes as if nothing happens. So the next time I hit Control N or click on this new start, this new icon, this is what you're going to have. Okay? All right. So now you now have option to choose from metric, imperial. You can see under this imperial, you see the feet and inch here. And for the metric, you see it's saying that default metric standard. So that means this allows you to choose whether you are using meters, millimeters, and so on. So that's standard. Then if you look up here, so this is called the start from scratch dialog box. But there are still some options here up top here. So we have our open a drawing, start from scratch. We have our starting from template or using a template, which is the one it defaulted to. Then we have starting with wizard. Okay. So you notice you have them, so you can just click here to choose. So even if you want to choose a template, from here you can always come here and choose the template that you want to use. So if I'm choosing any template, I'm going to be seeing a preview of that template here. All right. So I'll just go to metric and I'll click OK. And it's going to start a new drawing for me using metric. So now, once you start a new drawing, like I told you, the first thing I expect us to do is save the drawing. And you remember why we said that? So that anytime it crashes, we can recover it. Okay? Yeah, that's what I want to put on. So you save, no, no problem. So you save your drawing, that's the first thing. So let me do it as if I'm doing a project. So I want to teach us this as if I'm doing a project. So what I'm going to do if this was a real project. So once I open this guy, the first thing I'll do is to just come in, just go to save as, and I'll save it as a drawing. Then it tells me to choose a location where I want to save this to. So let's just say I'm going to save this in my desktop. Okay, so I'll just call this a name. So I'll just say, all right, February class, and I'll save this. Once I save, and that is saved. You can see the file path. Okay. If I hit save again, you see the name AutoCAD, Autodesk AutoCAD February class. All right. So that's the first thing you want to do, save. And the reason why we are doing this so that anytime anything happens, you can always recover. So once you have saved this, the next thing you want to do is to go to your application menu. All right. So once you go to your application menu, I will go to my drawing utilities. I want to set my drawing properties. All right. So if I go to drawing properties, it brings up this dialog box. And for this dialog box, you have some tabs: general tab, summary, statistics, and custom. So for the general tab is just showing you the basic things that cuts across the name of the file name, when it was created, the size, the location of this file. That's what this is showing. So you can see it's giving me the file type. It's an AutoCAD drawing file. It's giving me the location where this file is. It's giving me the file name up top here. It's giving me the size of this file and when it was created, modified, and accessed. All right. So we really do not need anything here. So if I go to the summary, so under the summary, this is where I can now start putting information on this project. So I'll give the title, give the subject, author, keyword. So let's say, for instance, this project is going to be maybe a 3-bedroom detached duplex, something like that. Then if I have a subject for it, you can put a subject. Then for the author, I'm the one creating it. So I'll just then keywords. So keywords are just more of a way of searching this, more of keyword to search for. But we don't really. Then if you also have a comment, you can put a comment here. But then the next thing is if you go to your statistics, it's still giving you some basic things that still come out with this. Now there's this another option under this custom. All right. So if you go to the custom, there are some information that this project property doesn't give you, which you can create yourself. So for instance, I can set, okay, maybe I want to add checked by dates for, do you understand? So if I'm having components, maybe I can say manufacturer, list of manufacturers, do you understand stuff like that? So if I want to add, what I can do is just come to add. If I go to add, I can say, okay, what are the property things I want to add here? So I can say maybe number of or size of stakeholders of this project. So if this project requires maybe 3, 4 engineers to work on this, and I've given a few number of stakeholders, I'll just put this there, and that will also form a property to this drawing. So you can put in different properties you want. So I can still come here, add another property, whatever thing I want to add there, whatever value I want to add as that property here. All right. So if I feel that okay, I've added some property I don't need, you can just select the property you don't want, delete, and that goes. Are we fine? All right. So once you're done creating this, setting this up property, I will just click OK. Those ones are part of the properties of this project. Then the next thing you also want to do after setting the property is to set your project unit. All right. Now we've chosen a unit, metric. But we've not really said whether it's going to be meters, millimeters, centimeters. You understand? So for us to do that, we'll come to this application menu again, to our drawing utilities, then you have your unit. All right. Unit has a shortcut. All right. So if I come to this unit, it brings up this dialog box. You can as well use a shortcut if you don't want to go through this long process of clicking, clicking, then clicking, 3 clicks. You can just use the shortcut. UN is the shortcut. Press enter, it brings the same thing out. All right. And also remember, I also told you guys that AutoCAD is not that too strict. So if you're looking for anything and you don't know the shortcut, you can type it in full. It works. So if I don't know the shortcut for unit, I can just say UINIT unit and I press enter. It brings the same. Do you understand? Just type. So let's look at the unit section. We have our length. How do we want to measure the length? All right. So do you want to measure it in decimal values or architectural unit value or engineering and so on and so forth? So because we are using metric, so I want to leave it as decimal. Then you can see the precision. I told us that AutoCAD gives us up to how many precisions? How many decimal places? 8 decimal places. So if whatever information I'm putting is up to maybe 4 decimal places, 5, you can choose that precision. All this is just so that your work will be accurate. You don't get to have unnecessary rounding up or down. You understand? So you can choose. So let's say I want mine to be to 2 decimal places. Then the angle. How do I want to measure my angles? What angle measurement am I using? Am I using radian? Am I using degrees? You choose them here. Then the precision to your angle also. If you know that you're going to be putting angles that goes to maybe to 1 decimal place, is I would advise you just choose the proper precision. Don't round it up to no decimal place so that you are sure that everything is accurate. But I'll leave mine to this. Then the next, I'm going to show us implication of rounding this up later on. All right, so the next thing is now coming to the insertion scale. This is where you now choose that particular metric unit you are looking for. So if my intention is not to work in millimeters, I want to work in centimeters, then I can just come here, choose centimeters, and that's it. So whatever value I put in now will be measured in centimeters. So if I type 1, it's going to be in centimeters. All right. So I'll leave it in millimeters. Then you notice this button that says clockwise. I told us that AutoCAD measures angle anti-clockwise. So if you want to force it to go clockwise, you can now choose clockwise. Then the measurement now goes clockwise. Then also, if you don't want to start your angle zero from east, remember we said angle zero is on east. You can also change where you want your angle zero to be from. And if I go to my direction, I can choose where I want the angle zero to be. Right now, angle zero is on east. So right now, angle zero is on east. So if I want it to be on my north, I can just say, okay, make the angle zero on the north. I'll just click on north. That has now been set. If I now make this clockwise, that means start from here and keep going this way. Because I said I want angle zero to be north, and I want it to go clockwise. Do you understand? But I'll leave it as is, go back to east, and once everything is fine, I'll just click OK, and that is set. Hmm? So basically, those are the things you need to do before you start drawing. Now, there is now another thing you need to, another setting you need to go and do, and that setting is out of the project now. This is a general setting, and that general setting I want to talk about is more of your file setting. So this is where you can now set your autosave backups that you want, how many backups you want, how long you want AutoCAD to automatically save for you. Remember we talked about that. So for us to do that, you click on the application menu, you come to your options. So if I come to the options, it's going to load this big dialog box that looks really complicated, but we are not talking about everything. So I'll just go to where we need to go. Then options is down here. So let's start from file. So under file, really there's nothing here to do under file. So we'll go to our display to see. So the display, you can choose whatever theme you want. So right now, I'm on dark theme. I actually like dark theme. Some people like light. You can choose light. So this place is just what is going to change to light theme. So if I choose light and apply, see this bar is going to make it a white color. Right? But because of Ray, I like using dark theme, so I just make this dark, apply, and it's going to set that. These are just general AutoCAD settings, not project. Then the other thing you also want to do is, let's see, I think is under our file and save, or our open and save. So under your open and save, then you have your auto save. If you come down here, You see your autosave, maybe yours is not activated. Is it active? Is active, autosave, automatic save. Then you can now put how long you want it to save. So maybe every 5 minutes, 30 minutes. Mine has been set to 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes you should automatically save. So even if I do hit Control S, it saves. So I'll advise you don't go beyond 10 minutes. I would even prefer 5 minutes. Let it save for 5 minutes because you are sure that at least every 5 minutes of work you have saved that. You can do a lot in 10 minutes. That if you lose that stuff, even 5 minutes can do a lot, but then you have that. Then we now also look for, so where is this backup? Uh, Number of recent file use. So if you come here, I think it should be under here still. Okay, so it says create backup copy for each save. Can you see it under here? Under that 5 minutes or the 10 minutes, it says create backup for each save. So every time you save, it's going to create a backup for you. And the reason for that backup, now that backup file is going to be saving, is going to be creating for you, is going to have an extension of .pak. And now, the benefit of you having that .pak file is that when you have there are times where your file will get corrupt that you cannot retrieve them. Even though recovers can allow you to recover those things. There are some files that you cannot recover them, but the backup is another way of you recovering these files. So all you just need to do is anytime you can recover a backup, sorry, anytime you can recover a file that is corrupt, all you need to just go to the backup of that file. The backup is always saved in the same location. So now that I've saved this guy on my desktop, the backup will also be saved on my desktop. So all I need to do is just go and change the .pak file extension and change it to PWG. All right. So AutoCAD gives you majorly there are four, there are three, but the ones we actually use also. So majorly it gives us two different file extensions, .pwg file and .pwc file. We also have .pwf file, .pws, right? But we don't really need these two guys, but these are the most important ones. So this is a drawing file. The .pwg is the drawing file. So when you save your file, it gives you a file extension of the .pwg. So that's the AutoCAD file we are using, whatever project you're creating. Then we now have this .pwt file. It's called template file. Okay, so what's this template file? So template file is what allows you to have that title block stuff. Remember when you started AutoCAD, anytime you hit Control N, it goes to open, creating a new drawing from templates. And when you choose a template has a preset title block for that. So you can also create your own custom template. You can create your own title block and for that and save it so that anytime you want to draw, you can use your own template and start. So the GWT creates a template file, or this one creates a drawing file. So those are the two files I'm showing. So all you need to do is just change this PAK. So let's say for instance I created this guy, I called it class 1, then it saves it for me as class 1.twg. So every time I'm saving, it's going to be creating the backup file for me. And the backup file will be named like this class 1.pak. Right? Sometimes you see class 1 maybe underscore 0001, which is the number of then dot pak. So if something happens to this guy that is beyond recovery, I can't recover it. All I need to do is just come to this backup and erase this guy. I'll just rename it and change this to DWG. And it's going to I can go to it and it works. Right? So that's it's going to be on the same location where you save this guy. So now in the case for this guy, I save this on my desktop. It's going to be on that same location, that desktop location. So I can just retrieve from there. So that's that. Then for your draft, you can choose how you want your mouse to be, the cursor of your mouse and other things. Really don't, all those ones are. So the major thing that we need are those things that we have looked at. So once you are done, you just apply and save, and that's it. Okay. So now that we have set our drawing properties, we have set our unit, and we have also saved the number of how long we want autosave to be doing for us and the backups. Then it is time for us to start drawing. Okay. So before we start drawing, I said we're going to look at three ways of drawing on AutoCAD. Three ways of drawing. So I will try as much as to start with the one that I'm supposed to start with, then go to the next one, and I'll now go to the simplest one of all, which I know that that's what you're going to be using. All right. So let's look at the first option. So the first option is using the coordinate system. So you want to create any object, is either use any of these three options, using the coordinate system, using your snap and grade, and then using the shortcut. All right. So let's look at using coordinate system. So you're going to be helping me. Those things we wrote down for the L, E. Did we do that E? Ah, I remember. You did it. And that's why we did it. I'm going to check it if it's going to give us that E. Alright. Okay. So let's look at the first one, which is using the coordinate system. So we'll start with the L shape. So before we even do anything, we will have to look at the first drawing tools. Drawing tool we have, which is line. So this is the drawing tool, line. Okay, so if I click on line, you notice AutoCAD tells me to specify first point. Okay, the shortcut for line is L. So it's asking me to specify first point. If I click here as my first point, look at the next thing it's telling me, specify next point. If I click here, it tells me specify next point. If I click here, it tells me specify. Hmm? Okay, so this is why yours is giving it with angle, because you have another tool. So these two, we're going to be talking about them while we're working. So this is what yours is showing, right? So now let's just continue with this. I'll tell you how to turn it off. I actually don't use this because it slows down the system, because it's having to do a lot of things. But let's just continue this way. Notice it tells me to specify first point or undo. Can you see that? So if I want this to be my next point, it says specify next point or undo. I'll specify. Now it's now saying specify next point or close undo. If I specify this, it's asking me specify next point or close or undo. So if I want to undo this guy, I told us on Wednesday that the option will always have something highlighted. So I want to choose undo, and I don't want to bring my mouse to click here. I want to be as fast as possible. I know that for me to choose the undo option, what do I type? U, because U is highlighted blue. So if I type U and I press enter, notice it undid. Is it correct? Undo. It undid that stuff. Do you understand? Then if I want to still undo, U again, see that. So if you keep doing that, then it's going to undo. If I now want to close this last point and the first point, I have option to close C. Right? So if I type C and I press enter, it closes this last point and the first point. Which is why, remember the coordinate system, why every time we always have C enter. Do you remember that? For all the coordinate systems examples we did, we always finished it with C enter, just to close the first and the last. So that's the simplest way of using the line tool. All right. So, but then we've not talked about the three ways we should draw, the proper ways. All right. So, but then let's go back to line again. L for line. Click here, click here. Now you notice I'm moving my mouse. What if I want my line to be straight? vertical, because most of the time we're going to be working with horizontal line, vertical line. I don't want to imagine, I don't want to try to assume that this is straight. I want to let AutoCAD do everything. So how to make sure that this line is straight? I will be coming down to this option key or this mode key to turn on stuff. Like I told you, I said those ones, they don't do anything. You only turn them on or off just to aid your drawing. And I will not be picking them as a topic. I'll be choosing them when need arise. Do you understand? So the first one that I need now is to make sure to make all my lines to constrain them vertical and horizontal. And the tool I need to use for that is called the auto mode. Auto. Yeah. And then this is the icon for the auto mode that looks like this perpendicular line. The shortcut is F8. Right? So if I click here, it's going to automatically, it's going to make sure all my, can you see my line is vertical, horizontal? It doesn't come at an angle anymore. Can you see? If I turn it off, now I can go at an angle. Do you see that? I can go at any direction I want. But once I turn this thing on using my F8, I can only come vertically down, up, or horizontal. Right? So that's the function of the auto. It constrains your line to the grid, all right? Either vertical or horizontal. You can see. Hmm? Then if I want to, if I now feel that I don't need it anymore, I can just turn it off by still pressing the F8. It turns it off. So now I can now go at any direction that I want. Are we fine? Mustafa, do you understand that? If you don't understand, tell me, I'll go back. You don't. The first time the last. No, no, no. If you have run a command and you've closed command, you are done with the command. So it's either you select, you delete it, or Control Z to close everything, to delete it. So Control Z will just undo everything you've done, that line, but not the normal undo that will undo a segment. That undo only works while this command is on, while this command is currently on. That's when this one works. But if you are done with this command and you go and press Control U, sorry, Control Z rather, it's going to undo the whole object created. Do you understand? So talking about that line, so for me to make my line vertically and horizontal straight, just to constrain it, I have to turn on a mode option, which is this auto mode. So if I turn it on, look at what happens. I told you that anytime these things have blue highlights, that means they are in on state. If this blue highlight goes away, they are in off state. So right now, this perpendicular icon is in off state. So if I click on this now, it's in on state, you can see. I'm unable to go freely now. I can only go either horizontal or vertical. All right? So that's that. So you notice if you create your line, you are having all this construction line all around. And for me, two things is distracting to me, and also it makes my system slow. It really makes systems slow. For you to be to be planning and doing this, it drags the system a little bit. So what I do is I actually do not use this. There's a tool that is making us have all this construction line, and that tool is called dynamic input. Okay, it has a shortcut, so it's F12. But this is where you get your dynamic input. So if you come to this customization icon by the side here, you have three lines, three horizontal lines. That's the customization icon. If you click on it, you are going to see all the things that you want to be represented down there. So you want to look for dynamic input. All right? Please, I need us to look up. So you want to look at this dynamic input. Make sure it's checked. Once you have it checked, it's going to bring it down there. I know it's down here, all right? But in your own case, you might not have it. So look for that dynamic input, check it. You notice the listing here. Dynamic input comes before auto mode. Can you notice it? So that means if you come down here, it should come before auto mode. So this is the dynamic input, all right? And the shortcut is F12. So that was why you're having this. If I turn it off, you notice you don't have it anymore. So I didn't have it on before. That was why in my own case, everything was this clean. But when you said that, I had to turn it on for it. So you can either turn it on using your F12, it comes back on, or clicking here. Turn it off again by using F12. Goes away. All right. So now we know two of these function mode. We already know three now. On Wednesday we looked at grid F7. Today we've looked at auto mode F8 and dynamic input F12. So you know the function of grid mode. It turns on the grid on and off. Dynamic input turns on and off all this construction line stuff. Then your auto mode turns on your constraining your line vertical and horizontal. Right? So let's now look at the different ways we can draw in AutoCAD. So the first one is the coordinate system. So let's try and create a line and try and work with coordinate system. We have the point, we have the location. So we don't have to be clicking. Since we know the location in the graph, all we need to do is just start inputting those locations. So we'll start with the L shape, the absolute coordinate system of the L shape. Once we are done with that, we'll do absolute relative, we'll do relative rectangular and relative column. So let's start with the absolute coordinate system. So it's asking us to specify first point. We know our first point is A. So what's the coordinate value of first point? 0, 0. You have to put that comma. So I type 0, 0. You can see the syntax here. So once you type that, you press enter. You notice what happens. You create a line and snap to that UCS icon. That is where our origin is. So it's asking for next point. So what's the coordinate value of the next point? So that's why I said you guys are going to be helping me. So you say 6, 0, you press enter. Then it's asking for next point again. 6, what? 2. The next point. 2, 2. Next point. 2, 8. Next point. 0, 8. Next point. C. Enter. It creates that, but you don't see anything. Yeah, the L. So we always, oftentimes you run into this stuff. You'll be creating stuff and you don't see anything. The reason is because your zoom factor is very large. You are very far away from it. So you need to zoom into that part to see it. Good morning, sir. So for me to see that guy, I'll have to zoom into this place, then I'll start to see that L shape. So this is the L shape I created. Eh? You roll your way. Eh? You don't have a mouse. If you don't have a mouse, then that's when you come here and start using this. So if you want to see it in this case, just come to zoom, zoom extent. It's going to bring it to your screen. Because that's the only drawing we have anyway. So then you can now start coming here and saying zoom out. Well, that's you're going to get to it. This is going to be stressful for you and it's going to waste your time. So that means every time you want to zoom, you have to do this. Zoom out. You want to zoom to one particular object, you have to now say zoom to object. That's stressful. So please. So you get how we did this now. I'll delete it again and we'll start it again, absolute, then now go to relative. So the first thing I want to do is because I'm creating line. So I'll say line enter is asking me to specify first point. The first point is what? 0, 0. I'll press enter. The next point is what? 6, 0, press enter. You notice it's creating this stuff now. We are now seeing it. The first one is 0, 0. No, L shape. L. You didn't write it out. Okay, so she'll be helping us. So the second one was what? The second one is called. We've done that. What's the third one? 6, 2. The next one, 2, 2. The next, you can see it's creating that stuff. 2 comma 8, press enter, it creates that. 0 comma, sorry, 0 comma. That, yeah, so now we are seeing as it's creating 0 comma 8, press enter. Then I told you that this is how you're going to have, then you have to close using C. That's why we have that C. So if I press C and press enter, don't, we are recording, you get the video. What? Why? We'll look at that later. We'll look at it later. Our guys practice that. We'll look at it later, please. So you see that? So we've created this L shape using absolute coordinate system. So let's try and see relative rectangular, whether we're going to still get this L shape. So what I'll do is I'll move this UCS icon, select it. We looked at this on Wednesday. Once you select it once, bring your mouse to this box, this square icon. Click it and go somewhere else. So let's say I want it to be here. I'll click. So this becomes my new coordinate system. So if I'm starting anything now, everything will be snapping to this place. So let's use the relative. Start by creating a line because we want to create a line. So the first point is 0, 0. The next point is what? So you have to press Shift and 2, right? Together at what? 6, 0. The next one is what? At 0, 2. The next one is 4, 0. Then minus 4. So now that we made this error, what do we do? This is not the class. We do undo. So anytime you make a mistake now, you have to undo that. That option is there. So I'll say U, enter, does that. Then we can now, so what's now at what? Minus 4, 0. Then at 6. Mr. Falabe, are you getting it? Then at minus 2, 0. Then C, right? You see that we still get that L shape. So let's try and look at the third one, which is the relative polar, right? So remember, before you even start putting at or 0 command, you have to have a command running, which is the line command. So if you was circle, you have to have the command running before you start putting those values. So we want to create a line. The first point is 0, 0, that is constant. So the next one is what? At what? 6 less than what? 0. So that less than is shift and a comma. Am I correct? Eh? So then what is the angle? 0, see that? So the next one is at what? 90, right? It goes up. I know that 90 goes up. So we are coming here, so that we should have 180. So what is the value? At what? Then at 90, at 2 less than 180, then C. You see that? But now, remember I turned off something, that dynamic input. There's a way you can actually bypass all this at less than using a dynamic input. It's only for this purpose, for your polar, absolute relative polar. And that's this. So if I turn on my dynamic, let me first off get rid of this, escape. Let me take this guy out. Let me take this here. So we're going to recreate this L shape using dynamic input. And we want to use the absolute relative polar. So if I turn on my dynamic input, what's the shortcut for dynamic input? Yes, F12. I'll be asking those questions. F12. So we have F12, L. So we are starting well. So you notice it says specify points. You're already having two fields there. So the first field is the x value, the second field is the y value, right? So that means I actually do not need to, all I need to do just is 0. If I hit my tab, it goes to the next value. It's 0, press enter, it snaps there. So now we will now start putting those values. So the next one is what? Instead of me saying at, I actually don't need to put at anymore because I'm using dynamic input. Dynamic input automatically adds at to it. So I need to just put the length, then the angle. So notice now what is highlighting is the length. So we know that the length is what? 6. Right? If I say 6, I'll have to hit tab for it to go to the angle. Then I'll put the angle 0. Right? You're going to create it. So the next line is 290. So type 2, tab 90, it goes up. Yeah, tab goes up. So now there's a problem here. So this is coming down, right? So if I do you to undo that, I think it's still making it clockwise, true. So, okay, let's see. 2 tab minus 90, right? It goes up. So that means you have to. So you have to choose the one that suits you, that you know you can work well with. So in the case for dynamic, it is tab that you're going to be using to go to the next field. So if I want to come back now, we know that the length is what, 4, right? So it's going to be 4. If I hit tab, because I'm coming towards this direction, so what angle is going to be? It's 180. Yeah, correct. So we'll do the same thing. So I think it's the 90 that is just flipping. So this is going to be 6, hit tab. If we press 90, it comes down. And we don't want that. So that means we want to go up. So it's going to be 6 tab minus 90. So anytime you do anything, it goes the other way. Just undo, do the opposite value. So in this case, 2 tab 180, then C, enter. You can see that I did not do any adds and I did not do any less than. So the dynamic input that's just the advantage of dynamic input. But aside this, it slows down the system. So I don't like using it. But that doesn't mean I should not tell you. So if you now feel you want to use it, fine. Do you understand? So now we've been able to use to do the absolute, relative rectangular, relative polar, and dynamic inputs for this L shape. So what we're going to do now is we're going to delete this guy, all of them, and try and do the H. Right? So we might not do all the shapes, all the different types. So I'll just, maybe for the H, I'll do absolute. For the E, we will do the relative. Then we can now go and practice and do other ones. So I'll change this back to my word coordinate system so that it goes back. You know, we have moved the UCS icon. So for the H, so you help me. So let me turn off this dynamic input. All right, for the H, it's asking for first point 0, 0. What's the next point? Absolute, H. 2, 0. All right. 2, 4, 3. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay. All right. 4, 5. Okay. 2, 5. 8. Okay. 0, 8. Then C. You can see that. So that's the H sign. So let's do the E, relative rectangular. The assignments. E relative rectangle. I don't know what you are writing, so anything you tell me, so L. So what's the first point? Okay, so this is how we're going to be doing it now. We are going to be interchanging it. You give me the first point, you It gives me the 7 point. Mr. Afolabi gives me the third point, and we continue like that. So, ladies first. First point, 0, 0. Mr. Ayola. No, we are using absolute. Absolute. Oh, okay. Relative. I said relative rectangular. Okay, sorry. At 5, 0. Mr. Afolabi. Relative rectangular. For E, did you do it? The assignment. So the third one. At what? 0, 2. That's correct. -3, 0. All right. 2. Mr. Falabi, 0. Okay. At 0, 2. Okay. At -2, 0. At 0, 2. Okay. 0. At, that's what she said. 0, 2. Mr. 4. -5, 0. Then everybody see. So we can see that how simple it is. But now the thing with that 0 comma minus 10 is that if you do 0 comma minus 10, it still tells you to pick next point. But if you use C, it's going to close it and close the command. Do you understand? So that's why the C is. That is the best. All right, we get that. So this is just the first way of creating object in AutoCAD using coordinate system. We understand this well now, right? So we look at the next method of creating objects in AutoCAD. That's using the grid and snap. So now in this method, I'm going to delete this. I'm only going to do the L shape. You're going to use that to do your H and your E. All right, so using your grid and snap, that will now require us talking more about grid and snap extensively now. So now, what is grid? We know the grid, all those lines, all right? There are all these graph lines that we have. Those are the grid lines. Now, the grid line, you can also use a technique to use that grid line to create your shape. Remember, all those grid lines, they have values. They have values, they are marked. So you can actually utilize those values to create your shape. So what will aid you to creating using those values, those grid line, is the snap. So the snap is more of a magnetizing effect to those grid lines. So how do we do that? First off, I need to turn on my grid lines, right? I need to turn on my grid lines so that you can now see how to now start snapping. So we know that the shortcut for grid line is what? F7. So if I hit F7, it brings up my grid line. So you can start to see the grid lines here. So these are the grid lines. If I F7 again, it goes off. So we want grid lines to be on. All right, the next thing is, if I go to line now, you notice I'm moving freely. Please, I need us to look up. It's asking me to specify first points. I'm moving freely and I'm not able to even snap to those points, right? That's one issue I noticed. The other pain point I've seen here is that I don't even know what is the unit from here to here. What's the length? I don't know. So how do I get to know this unit? Another thing I also need us to know is that you notice that this grid line has a major line and some minor lines. And if you count for every major, so these are the major lines, these thick ones, and these faint ones are the minor lines. I need us to put those things. So how can we now do this setting such that when we want to start creating anything, we can start snapping to those points and working. Then also set units for this grid point. So what we'll do is I'll close up all my command by pressing escape. Then I'll come to my grid. This is my grid and this is my snap. So the shortcut for snap is F9. So if I want to bring up my snap, I'll just type F9. It comes up. Can you see it's on beside the grid? If I press F9 again, it goes away. Okay? But then what we want to do is we'll come to this grid line, we'll right click on it. All right, please. I need us to look at this. We'll right click on the grid line. Once we right click, we want to go to grid settings. So if I click on grid settings, it's going to load this dialog box for me. Now it takes me to my snap and grid tab. So now it actually opens what we call drafting settings. Then inside that drafting settings, it now navigate us to the snap and grid tabs of that drafting settings. So this is where we are setting this whole thing. So the first thing we need to do is we need to first off come to our grid section is on the right, and let's look at the values you have here. So it's telling us that our grid X spacing is 10 units. All right. Remember we set our what's it called? Our units this morning. We set it to be millimeters. So that means when you have this 10, it means that's 10 millimeters. All right. And if I want to set this thing, I need to look at the shape I want to create. Now, the good thing with this grid and snap is that you can change it to anything you want at any point in time in the same value. I can change this spacing to anything you want for one particular value. For one particular shape, you have that. And another shape, change something so that can allow me to create that shape easily. So, I want to create this L shape. And remember, from here to here is what? 8. From here to here is 6. I will know that the smallest unit here is 2. So that means I want to have a grid setup that will have the spacing between the spaces. Am I making any sense? So I know that if I'm moving from here to here, it's 2 units. So how do we do that? We have our X spacing and we have our Y spacing. So we want to make this 2. And this is for the X from here to here. 2. We want to do for Y also. We make this also 2. Notice if I click here, automatically it jumps to 2. There's a way, if you don't want them to have uniform value, you can now override this one to whatever value you want. It can override. So 2. It doesn't allow us to override, but let's just leave it that way. Then you now have this major line remember this major line, this is major line, 1, 2, these are the major line. By default, it's saying major line should be every 5. So that means after you have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or this is your major line, you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see, every 5 units you should go to a major line. But this is none of our own business. You can make it anything we want. So let's say we want our own major line to be every 4 units, every 4 counts. Anything you want, anyways, works. So that is for our grid. Then we have to come to the snap. It's very important. We are only setting this grid. If I activate this now, look at what happens. If I say yes to this, and I want to notice this thing changes, and I want to create a line, I turn on my snap. You notice I cannot snap to it still. I have to turn on my snap so that I'll be able to snap to those points. If I turn on this snap, you notice that this thing is jumping. Can you see that it's jumping around? And I'm unable to jump to all those lines. The reason is because I've set my grid, I did not set my snap. So I need to also set my snap to be the same values I've set for the grid so that I'll be able to snap to those points. So what I'll do is I will escape, right click on this, setting, go and change my snap to the same value I have. Sorry, my snap. So I'll make this 2 and 2. And that's just everything I want to. So I want to be consistent with this value here. My X snap and Y snap to be the same thing as my X grid and Y grid. So once I finish that, look at what happens now. If I click on line, notice I'm now able to snap to those points. It's jumping, but it's jumping on the point. So I know that from here to here is 2, right? 4, 6, 8. So if I click, I know that I've done this part. So I want to do the other part. So I know that this is 2, 4, 6. I'll click. This is 2. I'll click. This is 1, 2. I'll click this all the way here. No, no, you're friend. For no, we don't. For this AutoCAD 2D, we're not working with column. We're not using column. So if later I want to do my, let's say for instance, I want to do my what's it called? What is the unit for this? From here to here to what? Okay, so let's say I want to create this shape now. Look at this, please, very important. I want to stylize this L shape such that I will create something like this. We know that from here to here is 2, right? So this is 2, 4, 6, 8. 2, 4, 6. So I want to create something that goes this way. From here, from here, then we go all the way to this place. From here, go all the way up. Come here. From here, get to this place. Then, can we do it? Do you think we can do it? So that means this is more of middle of all these guys. So all we need to do is just change our snap to 1 so that will allow us snap to the middle of this. Right now, we can only snap to this point. We want to be able to snap to the mid. So that means our snap should be set to 1 so that we'll be able to snap to this place and this place. And that will help us with that. So how do we do that? If we come to our snap setting, right click, grid setting, and just come to our snap 1 and make sure we are snapping to 1. Then if we start our line now, we know that from here to here, we are coming straight down to this last point. But before we get to this, from here to here, normally it should be 8. That means from here to here will be 7, right? So if this is 6, this is 7, 8. So we want to snap to this 7, click. Then we come to this place, snap. Then we know that this is 2, 4, 6. But we are not snapping at that 6, we are snapping at 5. We click here, come here, click, snap at the last one. So we'll come to this 2, but not 4. 3, right? So this is 2, 3. Then we snap this to this place. Then we move up and that. Do you see that? So you can actually utilize your snap to create anything you want. You notice that I had to quickly change this for this purpose and in the same drawing. So if you have another shape that has um, different snap or grid set up entirely, maybe that one is having increment of 5, 5. You can always go back to your snap, change it, and it will not affect this guy. If you are only using it to create something. Do you understand? So that's the second way you can use your snap, or you can create objects. So the first method is using the coordinate system, which we've looked at. The second method is using the grid and snap, which we've looked at. So I'm going to turn off this grid and snap and use the last method, which is probably the simplest one that you want to use. Do you have a question? All right. So the last method is probably what I know I'm persuaded of that you want to use, which is the simplest of all. So it's a plug and play method. All you need to do is just go to the direction, put the length, go to the direction, put the length, go to the direction, put the length. That's all. So what that means is that, so the first thing I need to know is that for the shape I'm creating, I know it is more vertical, horizontal. That means I need to put on my auto mode, right? So I'll put on my auto mode. Once I put on my auto mode, you notice my snap and my grid are off. Right? So I don't want to use snap. Here now, auto mode, constrain it vertical and horizontal. So if I go to this direction, I want to create the length. I know that the length is what? 8. Just move towards the direction you want to create and put the length 8. It's going to create it. I'll come towards this direction. I know that this is meant to be 6, right? Just move towards that direction. You need to make sure you have your line going towards the direction. Put the length 6. Come up, put the length 2. Come here, put the length 6. Is it 6? It should be 4. If undo, come towards the direction and put the length 4. Move up, put the length 6 and see to close. So if I want to create the L shape now, is very simple. So I think this is 10, right? Yes. 10, 2, 3. Right? 2, 2, 3, 6. So I can just from here move down 10, come here 2, move up 3, come here 2. You can see as I'm doing this. Come down 3, come here 2, move up 10, come here 2, down 3, come here 2. I don't think it's 10, I think it's 8. So I will just undo. U for undo. So I'll just come here 8, 2, 3, 2, 3, come here 2. You can see I'm just going to the direction and I'm typing the length. Come towards the direction, it should be 2. Come down, this should be 3. This should be 2. This should be 3. Then C for close. Just know the length and the direction and you're fine. Alright? Yeah, the auto has to be on. Right? So what's the snap? You should. Just click it to turn off. No, you have to turn it off yourself. So do we understand this so far? Hmm? So let's go to the next shape or the next object, drawing to. So now I took my time with this line to explain the different ways of creating objects in AutoCAD. I will not repeat myself with that anymore. So I just took my time to use this line to explain. So going forward, other shapes I'll be creating, I'll be using anything I want. I might be using click, I'll be using the last option. I just wanted to use this line to explain to you so anyone who wants to use so that we don't waste time. So the next one is polyline. And polyline is more like a line, but we are going to see the difference later on. You notice when we use our line, the only options we had, which are the sub-commands, are always close or undo, nothing more. Close, undo, close, undo. So if we go to polyline, if I click on polyline, let's go really simple. Let's try and create the L shape too. If I come down, this is 6, this is 8, 6, 2, come here 4, go up 6 and see. You can tell that they look alike, right? They look alike. I use line to create this and I use polyline to create this. How do I know? If I put my mouse on this and leave it for a while, it's going to read line and give me all that property it has. If I come to this one, leave my mouse a little bit, it's going to read polyline, give properties. But then still, they look alike. So why is that? But they have difference. They have differences. Now, one of the differences you get to have is that whatever object you create with lines will have them detached, meaning you've created them, but they still retain their individual segments. So it's more like we are in this class. We come to this class to be a what's it called? Maybe a group. But that doesn't change the fact that we still retain our own individual abilities. You understand? So I can choose to decide to leave this group if I so want. So there's no bond holding us together than just to come to this class, learn together, and go away. Do you understand? But on the other hand, if we decide to come to a class and we decide to say, okay, now we are coming here to learn and we are taking ourselves as G's, bone of bones, flesh of flesh, glue to ourselves, meaning if anybody comes here now, nobody is snitching. If anybody comes here to ask, who is Joe here? Esther can even say I'm Joe. Just even though it's obvious that babe, yeah, now how can you be Joe? And she still saying I'm Joe. Shoot me, I'm Joe. And you now say I'm Joe. I need to say I'm Joe. Mr. Afo said I'm Joe. Do you understand? We have a bond holding us together. Meaning if anything wants to happen to any part of us, it happens to all of us. So that's just one of the difference. So what happens in all these grammar I've just said? This thing that I created with line, if I select this segment, let's assume this is Esther. If I select this Esther, you notice I can select Esther individually. I can delete Esther. Sorry, I can't just type delete again. So I can select, so let me use myself. I can select Joe. You just click on the normal selection we did now. Because you did like this now. He has already gone ahead. You are selecting polyline. Is it not polyline? That's the difference I was explaining. I wanted to explain. But for polyline, if you select any part, everything is selected. I'm explaining the difference between line and polyline. I know you were working, so you were not even listening. So for line, if you select any part, that part is the only thing selected. You can decide to move that part away from where it is to anywhere you want, and it goes. You can decide to delete that part. But for polyline, if you select any part, it selects everything. If you delete, it deletes everything. They are joined together. All right. So that's one difference. The other difference for polyline is that you have a ton of settings you can do. A whole lot of settings. So I can decide to go to my polyline. By the way, the shortcut for polyline is PL. So if I don't want to click, I can just use the shortcut PL. It runs the same P line, polyline, which is the same thing as polyline. It's asking me to specify first point. Look at this prompt here. You know, I told you that anytime you're working, always look down there. It's very important. So if I click on my first point, you notice I now have some settings. If I was using line, it would just say next point or undo. But now it's saying next point or arc, half width, length, undo width. Meaning from here, I can start to say I want to create a line that has a different width. Do you understand? I can click here, the next thing, arc, half width, length, undo. So let's look at that. If I want to do half width now, for instance, if I choose half width, it's going to tell me to specify half the width of the line that I intend creating. So that means if I want to create a line that has a width of, let's say, 4 units, I'm only presenting half of that width, which is going to be 2. So it's going to create the 2 here from me. That's what the half width is. So let's say we want to put that. So we'll say we want half width of 2, press enter, Then it's asking for end point. So now it's asking for two things, the starting half width and the ending half width. You know, because I'm starting from here, I'm going to any direction. So this is my start and this is my end. So I want the width to be consistent. The width to be consistent from the start to the end. So that means I'm putting the same value. So I'll put 2 again. Then you notice I have this. So you can actually use this to create more of an arrow sign. So that means arrow sign in the sense that I want the starting width to be big and the end width to be 0. So you're going to give me, so I can use the same thing. I can say, okay, this time I don't want to use half width, I want to use width. So width means you are putting the whole value. So if I use width, W for width, it's asking me for the starting width. You can see that's giving me 4. Did the calculation. So if I want my starting width to be 6, for instance, I'll just say 6. The end width is proposing 6 again, but I want it to be 0. So that, and I'll just say 0 and see what I have. This is just line. We are doing a whole lot of things. Do you understand? So we can also go back. Okay, let's say we want to change this thing back. So just do our width. Everything goes back to 0. And we make this 0 also. Okay, so if undo, sorry about that. So I've reset everything. So resetting everything is just me coming and making all this thing 0 again. And we have that. So what if I want to create an arc? I can also create an arc with this polyline. Mind you, I've not stopped this command. I'm still working. I can say, okay, I want to create an arc. I'll just choose A for arc, press enter. You can see what I'm having. So the reason why I'm having this semicircle arc is because of my auto mode. It's constraining it to horizontal. So I'm having 180 degrees, so I'm going to have a semicircle. But if I don't want to have a semicircle, I can just turn off this auto mode, then I can go to the direction I want. So if I want it to give me a bit by Dre design, you understand? Just come here, change this back to line. There's option for me to change this back to line. I'll just go to line, and maybe I'll now turn on my auto mode and bring this up here. Then, and once I'm done, I'll press enter. So you can see that it's just one line that I use and everything is joined. Just polyline, I'm able to create the normal line, put a width to it, even put an arc. Do you understand? Is there the usefulness? I don't know. But there will be time, definitely there will be things where that will require you to do this. I've not met it before. I've not seen anything that will require me to use this because I can actually create them myself. But then it's there. And this is just for me, this is just me showing you the power of polyline and the difference between polyline and lines. All right. So that's that. Remember, what's the shortcut for line again? What's the shortcut for polyline? PL. All right. So what's the shortcut for putting on our snap? No, F9. What's shortcut for bringing up our grid? F7. What's shortcut for auto mode? What's shortcut for dynamic input? Mr. Fu. What's shortcut for unit? Unit. Eh? All right, so we have that. So let's look at UN. You first said you. So the next one is circle. Circle. All right, so the shortcut for circle is C. But if you notice under circle, there is this arrow that you can find directly under it. If I click on the arrow, it's giving me some names: center radius, center diameter, 2.3. So this is just telling you that these are various ways you can create circles. It's giving you different ways with which you can create the circle. It could be arcs, it could be arcs for center point. So if you were asked for center point and the radius of the circle, you know where the center point of the circle is going to be and you know the radius. And this option is better. This option is the right one to choose. If you don't know the center point of the circle, but you know 2 points that is going to that circumference or a part of the circle will pass through, you can choose 2 points. So let's look at them. The shortcut for circle is C. But let's look at this icon method first. If I go to center radius, the first thing it's going to ask me for is specify center point of circle. So I want to create a circle I want to finish up this bit by tray. So I want the center point to be center here. So I'll pick here as my center point. Then it's asking me for, you can see, specify the radius of the circle. So if you have a radius value, you can put the radius value. Or you can just drag and set. But then, there's one thing I always use for training purpose, where I don't have values, but I want to put in a value, but I don't have value. If your auto mode is on and you are dragging your mouse, you are going to see a value that is changing there. So it's giving you the current value. This is just going to give a feel of the value that you are looking for. So if I want my circle to be inside this, that means choosing 8 will not work, right? So I should look for value that is less than this. So maybe 4, less than 4, and so on. So in the case, maybe I want this value to be, I think 3 should be fine. So I will just come here, put the radius, it's asking for radius, 3, press enter, it creates that. So center radius, we're asking for center points where the circle will be created, and then the radius of the circle. Then we also have center diameter. So that means you know the center point, then you know the diameter. Then if I click, maybe this is the center point, and I have a diameter, maybe I want to create a circle of diameter 10. I will just put the 10 value for the diameter and create a center diameter. Okay, then we also have 2 points. So in this case, you don't know center point, you don't know the diameter, you don't know the radius, but you know 2 points that the circle will pass through. So in the case of that, I want to put a circle here. I want it to come this way. So that means I don't know let's assume I don't know the length of this edge, that base, but I know that the circle should pass through from this point to this point. Then 2 points is the best option to choose. I'll just come here, go to 2 points, and I come here, click on this edge, and come to this next edge, click, it creates that. That's using 2 points. Do you have any questions so far? So what I've done so far, there's no question. Yeah? I expected you guys to watch. Like, anytime I'm doing anything, always watch. Anytime I ask you a question, that is, I expect you to watch something. And I ask, why is this happening? Or why is it not happening? Right? So remember, look at it. When you create anything, so let's do 2 points again for this end. 2 points. And I'm here, I can, you notice I'm seeing this green stuff. I'm able to snap to those things. But my snap is not on. So why am I having that green thing? Why? Okay. Okay, is it because the option we chose, right? Let's choose another option. Let's choose center radius. I will come here. We still have it. So does that now tell you that it's not the option that we choose that is bringing up this? It's because of another snap that is on, not the usual snap that we have. This snap is called our grid snap. There is still another snap which is object snap. Grid snap allows you to snap to grid lines or grid points. Object snaps allows you to snap to object point, point to an object. So this is an object. I'm able to snap to the end point of this object, or to the end point of this object, or to the center point of this object, or to the tangential point of this object. Notice it relates to this object. So it's because another snap is on by default. If that snap wasn't on, believe me, you won't be able to snap to those things. And you will just assume. So let me turn off that snap. And what is causing that is called the object snap. The shortcut is F3. This is here. Object snap, all snap. And it's on by default. That is why we are able to snap to it. If I turn off this object snap, all snap, this sign here, you notice it's not active anymore. If I try to create circle now and come here, can you see any green stuff anymore? That means I don't have that ability to snap to this. So if I come here and I say I want to do 2 points, and I want to snap from this point, I come here, I click from here to this place. Is it accurate? Is it accurate? To you, you think it's accurate. But by the time I start zooming in, you notice that I didn't actually snap to that point. And if you come here also and you come here, you notice that I didn't also get it. But if you are far away, you think, this is correct, they are identical. So that is the function of that object snap. It allows you to, it forces you to snap to that point. So at every point in time, by default, it comes on. It comes on. That's why you can snap also. But I know maybe your kids or your siblings will take the system and do something and change some things. You are not able to snap to it anymore. How do you turn it on? It's just object snap. You just need to activate it. Then there is an arrow beside it. If you go to the arrow, these are the snap points. Sometimes all the snap points are not on. You need to check them. Or you need to turn on things that you know you need. So let's see how we can utilize the snap and see how we can work with it. So if I want to turn off all the snap, I can either turn them off from here by unchecking them, or I can just go to the setting. If you click on the arrow, you have to the snap setting. I can say clear all, everything goes away. Then I want to be able to snap to only, listen please, I want to be able to snap to only midpoints. I want to be able to snap to only midpoints. So that means if I want to be able to snap to only midpoints, what I need to be on is only what? Midpoint. All of them have their own signs. So you need to look at the sign. How you get to know the sign is that you can see their signs here. So anytime you see triangle is midpoint. Anytime you see box or square is endpoint. So you need to also know those symbols by heart. Do you understand? So because I want to be able to snap from midpoint to midpoint, what I'll do is I'll activate this snap point first and go and put on only midpoint. Only midpoint, please check. Only midpoint. If I create a shape now, I want to use 2 points. If you come to this place, you notice I'm unable to snap to anything. It's only forcing me to midpoint. I can't snap to any other thing apart from midpoint. So you can actually utilize that. So when you have that, you actually don't need to get to that midpoint. Once you come to the object and you click, it automatically snaps to that midpoint. Come to this place and you click, it snaps to that midpoint. You notice this one snaps. So this is not the midpoint. So I think because I missed that, so let's just come here. If I come here, it snaps. Can you see? Come here. Once I light, it snaps. Do you see that? So you can utilize this snap point, object snap points, to your advantage also. So, but let me turn on everything. Eh? You can have as many snap points as you want, but I like having everything on. So that's that using 2 points. Then you have 3 points also. So 3 points means you have 3 points that you want the circle to pass through. So now we've looked at another mode to now, object snap, because of the need that we had. So if I go to 3 points, so that means I know that I want to create a circle, all right, that will pass through this point, and this point. I'm just assuming. So let's assume we know that the circle we want to create will pass through this point, and this point. Then we'll choose 3 points option. Just choose those points that you want. You can see that I have that. I'm able to snap to those points. And once I click, it's going to create a circle that will pass through those points. Okay, so the next one we have is tangent radius. So that means you have 2 tangential points to your circle and 1 radius value. So you can do that. So let's assume we want to create a circle such that, it's going to be tangential to this circle and to this line. Then we'll have a radius. All right. So I don't know the radius yet, but we'll look for value. So I'll choose tangent, tangent radius. So if I click here, it's going to ask me to specify, and it's saying specify points on object for force tangential to circle. So I can choose any of this. So let's just pick anywhere on this object. It's asking for the second object. I'll pick this circle. Then it's now asking for a radius, but it's proposing the radius value for us. If we want to go with that, we go with that. If we have a value, so let's assume we have a value, our own value is like 6. We can choose that value. Or let's say 5, for instance. We just override that by typing 5. Then it's going to create a circle. But now this doesn't look like what I want. I want this guy and these two. So let's delete this. I want it to be inside. I don't know if it's possible. Is it possible to have something like this? Is it possible? So let's see. So first, second, let's choose a smaller one. So let's try maybe 2.5. Ah, okay. So it's creating it, but then this line, if you extend this line, there's this imaginary line that is creating that will be tangential to it. So it's assuming an imaginary line here. But then that is the tangent tangent radius, how it works. So let's try and see whether it will work in this case. So I have this as my first tangential object, the second tangential object is giving me a radius. So let's say we want to go with radius 10. You can see. So this is something obvious we can work with. Then we have, this looks like Mickey Mouse. So we have tangent, tangent, tangent. So we have 3 tangential points to this object. Let's assume we want to, let's create a line 1 here. So turn off this. So we want to create a circle such that these 3 lines are tangential to it. So we can just say tangent, tangent, tangent. Choose this, we choose the 3 lines in any order that you want. It's going to create them. So that's what the tangent, tangent, tangent does. All right. So like I said the shortcut for circle is C. So if you don't want to use the icon, you can just say C, press enter, then it gives you the options. So 3P means 3 points, 2P means 2 points, then you have TTR. TTR means tangent tangent radius. Then the default one is using the center radius. So if you want to use center radius, you can just pick the center point and then pick your radius. But if you don't want that, you can now, that's when you can choose any of these options. Okay. Then the next one we have is arc. The shortcut for arc is A. Now arc also has different ways of creating it. You can see you have 3 points, you have start center end, you have start center angle, start center length, start end angle, so on and so forth. I'm not going to look at every one of them. I'll just pick maybe a few of them and explain. You can practice with other ones. So let's look at 3 points first. So we know 3 points that this arc will pass through. If we click here, so let's assume the arc will pass through this point, and this point. See, we create that. This point, and this point. So any point you want to choose, you can just pick that, create that. So that's what 3 points does. Then we have our start, center, end. So this is the order with which AutoCAD will ask you. It will ask you for the start point of the arc first, the center point making the arc, then the end point. So if I know that I'm going to create an arc that is starting from this center point of this guy, or where the center point is on this guy, and it's starting from somewhere here. Okay, maybe the end point will be somewhere here. I don't know. We can choose our start center end. So if we click on start center end, it asks us for start point first. So we want this to start from here. Then the next thing is center point of arc. We want center point to be the same center point with this circle. Then the end point. As you can see as I'm going. So maybe this is the end point. Click. You can see we have that. Then we also have start and angle, start and direction. All right. Yeah. Okay. So now we know that by default, AutoCAD goes anti-clockwise. So if you want it to be the other way, two things you are going to do. Either you change your order of the order at which you pick this thing, or you do the other thing. So what do I mean by that? So if you come here and you choose your start center end, right? So if you want it to go this way, hmm, if I'm choosing my start, I have to choose this place as my start, then choose my center, then choose my end. So let me turn off this auto mode. So this is my end. You can see the direction. So it will still follow that anti-clockwise direction that we have. We've always been talking about. That AutoCAD measures its angle anti-clockwise. Okay, that's that. So let's look at the second one. Is if I choose here as my first point, this is my center, and it's going this way. And I don't want the direction to go this way. I want it to go this way. Notice as I'm coming this way, it's changing. It's always coming anti-clockwise. So what I can do is if I hold down control, it temporarily changes from anti-clockwise to clockwise. Then it changes the direction. If I let go of my control, it goes back. So you have to hold down the control to temporarily change it. Click before you leave your control. So those are the two options. Either you change the order at which you pick these things, or you hold down control to temporarily switch. Do you understand? Then we have our start end direction. Now this start end direction is like exception to that, all those things I've said. So that means I can pick a start point for the arc. So it's going to ask me for the start point, end point, and direction. So if it's asking me for the start point, this is my start point, and this is my end point. Then the direction, I can say I want it to come this way or this way. That's the exception we have for that command that we know, that going anti-clockwise. If you choose start end direction, you can choose your own direction. Either you want it to come this way or to go that way. All right, so then you have your start. So you can just look at all these things and play around with them. Just note something that whatever option you choose, you are going to follow the prompt accordingly. So that means if I'm choosing this option now, it's going to start with the start point. The first thing it's going to ask you to specify is the start point. The next thing it's going to ask you to specify is the center point, then the angle that is creating that circle, that arc. All right, so then the next thing we have is we have our rectangle. All right, so the rectangle, if you click on the arrow beside it, you have inside that arrow, you have rectangle and polygon. So let's look at rectangle first. So for the rectangle, if I click on rectangle, the shortcut for rectangle is rec, R-E-C. So if I click on rectangle, it tells me to specify first point. So the way rectangle is being created is asking for a diagonal. That makes it more of, for you to measure TV, the inch value that you're talking about is the diagonal length. So that's what rectangle is asking for. For you to create a rectangle, the first diagonal point and the other point. So it's asking me for first corner point. So this is my first corner point, maybe this place or that place. So if I make this my first corner point, the next thing it's going to ask is what? Other corner point. Can you see? So if I bring my mouse, you can see. So if I want the other corner point to be this way, then if I'm okay, I'll click and create the rectangle. So the corner point is asking if you join them together is more of your specifying the diagonal length. All right. So that's it to rectangle, nothing more. Do you have any question? Before I go to the next one. Mr. Afo, do you have any question? Talking about rectangle, do you have any question? Mr. It has now. So do you have any question with regards to rectangle? That's the question you have about. It will be hard without mouse. It's really tough. All right, so I have a question. If you don't have a question for me, what if I want to create rectangle with dimensions? Like I have a length and I have the width or breadth. So I want to create rectangle. Use rectangle option to put dimension. Yeah, let's see that rectangle. Where's the value? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Where which value? That's what I want to. So if you want to, I've asked you. So the answer is staring at us. What if I want to create rectangle with dimensions? So you just choose the dimension option. So I'll just choose the dimension, D for dimension. Then it's asking me for the length of the rectangle. So if I want to create a rectangle of length 60 and with maybe 45. So it's asking me for length. I'll put the length 60, the width 45. Then the next thing is the direction I want it to go. You notice this was where I started clicking from when I started. So it's telling me whether I want it to come this way or that way or that way. So this is just that. So I've actually created this with dimension. So the next thing I'm doing now is what direction I want it to go. Right? So that's how you create. Or specify first point. After you specify that, it will now say specify other corner points or area, dimension, and so on to so on. So let's do it again. Rectangle, specify first point, oh my, other point, or you can see area, dimension, rotation. Hmm? So I will say dimension. What's the dimension? So I want to have 60 by 30. Yes, no. So that's that. Then, hmm? Rectangle, specify first corner point. I want this to be my first corner point, just here. It's asking for other corner points or area dimension. I want to put dimension, so I'll type D for dimension. It's now asking me to specify the length of the rectangle. So I want the length to be, so let's say I want my own length to be 20. I'll press 20, enter. Then the width, I want it to be 45. So 45. Then the next thing is what direction do I want to place it? So this is the 20 and this is the 45. So click. I'm just moving my mouse. I'm moving my mouse. That's when you can now. No, 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 no. Okay, so just look at it, please. Look at it. Rec. Then first corner point. I'm choosing this as my first corner point. Before I choose my other corner point, I want to set my direction. So I'll say dimension. I want my length to be, let's go with that same, okay, 30 and 45. So it now comes back to specify other corner points. So at this point, you've already set your dimension. You can just now move your mouse to what direction you want. So now at this point, you're not specifying corner point anymore. The corner point is now like the direction you want the other corner point to go. Okay, and you can also choose your rotation. If you don't want it to, you can just, oh, so that's the issue. That's what I wanted to talk about now. The rotation. So he has already tampered with rotation. So that's why his own is going. So if you come to this rotation, you know angle 0 is normal straight. So if I want it to go at maybe angle 45, I can just go 45. So now it's now 45. And I can now start setting the dimension again. I'll just go back to D for dimension. So you can see, so that's why you had this. So the rotation will still go back to that normal 0, 90 this. All right, so the next one we have is the polygon. The shortcut for polygon is POL, or you can type it in full. So if I type polygon, it tells me the first thing it's going to ask me to do is enter the number of sides. So depending on the kind of polygons you want to create, you choose the number of sides. So we know what polygons are now. If I want to create a pentagon, 5 sides. I want to create octagon, 8 sides, and so on and so forth. All right. So let's say we want to create hexagon now. So this is going to be 6 sides. Press enter. Then the next thing is going to ask for is center point, creating this polygon. Let me escape. Polygon command is saying enter number of sides. Just type it. So if I type 5 now, by default is 4. Just override by typing whatever number you want. So it's now asking us to specify center point. So now this is where you see the two ways you can create polygon. Either by creating it using a center point or by specifying edge length. So we'll look at the center point first, then we'll look at edge length later. So let's use center point option. So I want my rectangle to be here, or my polygon to be here. I'll click. The next thing is asking is to choose an option. It's more of a property of that polygon. Is it going to have a property of being an inscribed polygon or a circumscribed polygon? So we know the difference. Inscribed is going to be within a circle, circumscribed around the circle. Now, both of them will look quite different. One will be larger than the other one. And that doesn't change the fact that they still share the same center, the same radius creating them. It's just that one is inside the circle, one is outside the circle. It's not going to create the circle. You are not seeing it, but it's a property. So we're going to do both. We want it to be inscribed. So we choose I for inscribed. Then it's asking us for radius. So let's choose a radius. So let's say we want to put a radius of 30. Remember this radius, 30. And then it's asking, okay, it's asking for radius, say 30. Hold on. Let me turn on this auto mode so that it can. 30. So we have that. We've created this hexagon with the property of being inscribed on a radius of 30. So we'll go back and create another polygon of the same radius, but now it's going to be circumscribed. So we'll see the difference. So if I say POL, we want to go with the same value, 6. The center point, the same center point. So we'll see, we choose it. Then this time we want it to be circumscribed. See. Then it's asking us for a radius. So we said we want the radius to be 30 still. So we say 30. Look at the difference. One seems bigger than the other one. It's just because one is created within a circle and one is around the circle. So if I go and bring my circle to show us and choose the center point and the radius of 30, you see the difference. One is created inside the circle and one is created directly outside the circle. So that means they both share the same circle. Right? So it doesn't change the fact that they have the same radius creating them. So this is just one way of creating a polygon using a circle or a center circle. But what if we don't know about any center point? All we care about is we know the length. Mind you, AutoCAD only allows us to create regular polygons. Irregular is not allowing us to create a regular polygon, just regular polygons. So that means all these lengths are equal, right? So what if I want to create a pentagon now, 5 sides, that has this length on each of the edge? So let's say the length of 25. That is, all the edges are 25 units long. So how do we do that? So we go to polygon, and we said we wanted to be pentagon 5 sides. So I'll just say 5, press enter. So instead of me choosing center point, I will choose edge. So I'll just say edge. Then it's asking me to specify first point. So this is the first point. Then it's asking me to specify other points. I said I want the length to be what, 25. Just move towards the direction and type the length, 25. So that's the second way of creating. Just put the length. Move towards the direction you're going, put the length, it's going to create that. So all this will have the same length, 25 units. Okay, so this is, so we've spent 2 hours now. Let's just finish up this place, then I'll give us classwork. Okay, so that's polygon, then we have ellipse. So for ellipse, the shortcut for ellipse is EL, POL, or you can always type them in full. The shortcut for ellipse is EL, and ellipse also gives you room to create 2 ways of creating this ellipse. So if I, just to explain something to us, Esther, do you still remember engineering drawing, the those terminologies for ellipse, creating ellipse, all these major axis, minor axis? Thank you. All right, so the reason why I'm bringing that up is because AutoCAD doesn't, AutoCAD is not concerned with major or minor. All right, we know from engineering drawing, we know that major axis is the length that is the longer length, and the minor. So if we have an ellipse that goes this way, oh sorry, let me just use this to create it. We have something like this. For this kind of ellipse, this is our major axis, right? This is our major axis, while this is our minor axis. So this is the major, and why this is the minor. No mind my, get the gist. But for AutoCAD, these ones are just by the way. So what AutoCAD is concerned with is that it's going to ask you for 2 things. Can I remember again? I'll try to remember. But it's not using major axis. It's asking for um, distance and edge length, if I'm correct. So let's see. But now, what I'm saying this is that whatever value you choose will now determine which one is major or minor. If your edge length is smaller than your distance, automatically your distance becomes your major axis. And you could make your edge length longer than your distance. Then if your edge length is longer than your distance, that means automatically your edge length is the major. So it doesn't ask whether it's going to be major or minor. It's only going to ask for the edge length and also the distance. Right? So the edge length could be this, maybe this place, or could be this place. But let's just see. So if you come to your ellipse, EL for ellipse, or you could just come here and choose the center. Okay, sorry, axis end, not edge length, axis end, sorry. But that distance is constant, it's asking for axis end and also your distance. So if I choose my ellipse, it's going to ask me to specify the axis end of my ellipse. But then, notice we have options. 2 ways of creating it, center and axis end. So let's look at the center first. So if I say center, it's going to tell me to specify center point of my ellipse. So when I want my ellipse to, the center point that's creating the ellipse. So if I make here my center point, the next thing it's going to ask me is the end of the axis. All right, so which is why I actually came here. You notice you have 2 ways, either using center or axis end. If you use the center, that means you are specifying the center point, right? The next thing is going to ask you to specify is the axis end and the distance. If you specify the axis end, the value you are specifying should be half of the total ellipse you are looking for. So if your intention is to create an ellipse of, let's assume this place to this place should be 40, and this place to this place should be 60, like you said. If you are using the center option and you want to specify this end, the value you are going to put is going to be 20. And when you are specifying the other option also, the value you are going to be putting is 30. So you are going to be putting half half because you are choosing the center option of creating that ellipse. But if you use the axis end, you are specifying one full length and one half. This is very important. If you are using the center option of creating ellipse, both information you are putting, either axis end and distance, you are specifying half values. But if you are using the axis end option, you are imputing one full length and one half length. Please. Okay. So because we want to use the center option, and we are choosing here as our center, and we want to do the axis end. So let's assume we want to create that 60, 40 times 12. So the horizontal one, because we want this to be 40 and this to be 60. And I want to do the horizontal one. So that means I'm putting 20, right? Because I'm choosing center option. So I put 20. Then the next one is asking is the distance. So the distance, which is this height one, we want it to be 60. That means I'm putting half of it, which is what? 30. So if I put 30, it's going to create this. If I'm to measure this and to check, this will be 60, while this will be 40. Look at it from here to here, that's 60. And from here to here, that's 40. You can see that. Don't worry, don't worry. Once we get to dimension, I'm just showing us. So this is using the center option. So let's look at the other option, which is the axis end. So if I come here, I want to use the axis end option. Remember I said the axis end, you are giving one full length and one half length. So if I specify this axis end, it's telling me to specify, notice it's not saying center point, it's saying specify axis end of the ellipse. So it's asking me for the full length now. All right. So let's say I want to do the horizontal one first. So I'll pick here first, which is the first side, and the other side is, because I want it to be 40, right? Notice it's saying specify other end of the axis. So I'll just move towards that direction and type 40. Once I type 40, the next thing is saying specify the distance of the, so you can see that where this measurement is starting from, it's from the middle. So that means I'll specify half of that, which is 30, and that's that. And if I'm to check this also, it's still the same thing. From here, from this endpoint to this endpoint is 40, and from this place to this place is 60. All right. So that's for the ellipse. Then we now have the elliptical arc, which is this. So it's just ellipse, but you are now making it arc. So if I go to elliptical arc, it's asking me to specify endpoint. So let's assume my end. Yes, the second is at this end. The last one is elliptical arc. So if I make this my start point, half half, one full, one half. So the first one you are putting is always the full one, and the next one is the half. So for elliptical arc endpoint, then set my radius, set my distance. Then it's now asking me to specify the start angle. So I want the arc to start from here, the elliptical arc to start from here, and I want it to go all the way here. Remember, I said if you hold down control, what happens? It switches. It doesn't work for elliptical arc. It only works for circle. So if you like hold down control till tomorrow, it will not work for elliptical arc. Alright? So if you want to make it go other way, that means that's when you use the changing your first option. So you pick from the top and coming this way. Click. Alright? So it's very important. Then the next and the last one we're going to look at here, we are still going to come back to this later, but for today we'll stop here, is hatch. So we know what hatch are. They are cut patterns for various materials. So various engineering materials, not engineering materials, various materials. So we can say wood, concrete, brick, metal, glass. There are patterns we use to denote them when you cut them, cut surface. So that's what hatch is used for. And we need to note something that hatch is only added to an enclosed shape. So if your shape is not enclosed, hatch will not work. So in the case of this, I can add hatch to this object. All right. This arc that you have here, I can't add hatch to it. I can't add hatch to this guy, this line, because it's not enclosed. But anything that is enclosed, I can add hatch to it. All right. So if I come to this hatch, I don't know the shortcuts. I always type it in full, or I can click it. So if I click on hatch, now let me escape first. If you notice under this hatch, there are two other things here. We have boundaries and gradients. Anyone you choose, you can still see other ones there. So I don't really talk about it. Because if I choose hatch, inside the hatch, I will see my gradients and boundary. If I choose gradient, inside the gradient, I'll still see hatch. And how do I see them? Once you click on any of them, you come to this pattern. I have them here. You can see choose gradient from here. And gradient will give you color. If I escape, I come here, I choose gradient, it defaults to gradient. And from gradient, I can always still go back to my pattern. All right. So, and for that boundary, that is out of our scope. That's when you are converting an object to 3D. Shapes to 3D, that's when we use boundary and regions. But then we are not looking at that. So let's just go to hatch. Then the first thing you want to do is when you run your hatch command is to come to this place and choose the kind of hatch you want. Sometimes you would want a solid object, a solid color. You can choose a solid. Once you choose a solid, then it allows you to pick a color. Okay, so let's just start with the solid, then go to the hatch, then go to gradient. So solid is as it says, choose any solid color that you want to fill a shape with. So I can, once I choose solid, you notice this one grays out. I'm only left with the type of color. So now we have two types of color. So we have the hatch color and we have the background color, right? So it turns off the background color and gives us only the hatch color. And for the hatch color, we can now choose the color that we want. So if I say, okay, I want to have this color, and I choose that color. So it's expecting me to go to an enclosed shape for me to highlight. So if I come to this guy, you notice it's not giving me a preview until I go to an enclosed shape before I see that pattern. I'll click. You have to click. If you don't click, it will only highlight and tell you that this is what you're going to have. So if I click on it, then I now have that stuff. Then I can. So once I'm done with whatever color I want, if I feel that I don't want this color anymore, I can always come back, choose a different color that I want. So once I'm done choosing the color, I'll just close hatch. So you can actually add one hatch color or one hatch pattern to various objects. It's not a must that you have to do for this, close it, do for that. If you know that these two guys, you want them to have the same color, you don't have to close. You can add them at the same time. All right. So if I select this hatch pattern, it takes me back to this edit. I can come back to this and add this. So okay, we've already done this. So let me just, so now that we've done that, we can always come here and remove, we can also pick points. Yeah. Objects at the same time. Okay. You can't. If you want the second object to have different color, that means you have to add to one, finish it, go and add to that other object. All right. So if I say pick points, I can add to that point. And once I add to that point and I close, you should meant to. I don't know why it's not showing. So create, let's see, select, and then okay, but I can select this hatch and then delete it. Then I can go back to the hatch. So once I go back to the hatch, choose a solid, I can pick the object that I want it to have and then fill. That's just the simplest way of doing that. So that's working with color. So let's look at another thing under hatch, which is the pattern. So if I come to this hatch, so instead of me adding color, I can come here, choose a pattern. Okay, let's just go to gradient before we come to pattern. If we go to gradient, you notice we now have two colors to mix with. Right? So I can say, okay, I want to mix between this blue from this place. So I'll choose between this and white. Then you can also choose the type of gradient you want. So let me just even choose the value that we can actually see. So you can see we can move from, maybe we want to have a linear gradient or a cylindrical gradient or in cylindrical, what do they call them? Then you can actually circle here to choose whatever gradient you want. You can also click on this drop down to show you a whole lot of them at the same time instead of you clicking one by one. So you can choose whatever pattern you want. If you choose that and you fill the object you want, and that becomes the pattern. We'll talk about that options later. I just want to finish up these guys before I come to this place. All right, so you see that we have these patterns added and this. So if you later on, if you don't want this, you want to change it to this, you can change it to whatever one. So notice we've changed this here and we have this. And I want to invert the color. I want the red to be around and the green inside. It's just a mere thing of coming here, changing this to green, changing this to red. Okay, so that's that. So let's look at the last one, which is the pattern, which is the hatch. So if I come here and I come to this pattern, now we now left with this. So we can come here and choose a particular pattern we want to add. So you can see we have a brick pattern, we have different, you can scroll. Have different patterns you can add. You have your brick, you have your cross, you have your cork, clay, brimstone, brass, name it else. So let's just say I'm going to add this brick. If I click on brick, then it asks me to look for an object to add the brick to. Yeah, now this is what I'm looking for. So if I add the brick to this guy, you notice we have a brick object, but then the brick is not defined. And this is not a new thing that you always run into this kind of problem. And that is when you add a hatch to objects, you either don't see the hatch or you just see white color. When you add hatch object, when you add hatch pattern to object and you don't see the hatch, it is only one thing. It only means one thing, that your hatch pattern is too large. You need to scale it down. And when you add hatch to an object, instead of you seeing the hatch pattern, you are seeing white color. It means the hatch is too dense, too small, that you are not seeing the pattern. Everything is now too dense and it becomes white. All you need to do in that case is just to enlarge the scale so that you can see the pattern. So in the case of this, the pattern is too large. We can barely tell if this is brick pattern. It's too large, so we need to scale down this pattern. So what I need to do is come down. So that's where we can now start talking about all these things. Yeah. So we need to come to the scale option, which is this last option there, to scale this down. So by default, 1 is what we have. If we bring the scale, we start bringing this down, 0.3. You begin to start to see the pattern coming up. So I think 0.3 is still too large. So if I come here, I say, okay, I want 0.15. We are now seeing that pattern. All right. So the other thing you also have is that you can also change your angle. So if I come to the angle, I can change the direction. Yeah, see, as I'm changing this angle, it's going. So let's assume your own hatch, you want it to go 90 degrees. You can just type 90 degrees and your brick is going down. Okay, so let's take it back. Then the other thing you also have is your transparency level. Okay. And that transparency level is you can decide to tell how faint you want it to be. If I start adding transparency to this now, so transparency usually between 0 and 90. Now AutoCAD purposely didn't make it 100 because why do you want it to be visible? If you want it to be visible, why did you create it in the first place? Okay, I want to create something here and I don't want to see it. Why? So that's why I made that transparency 90. At least you want it to be transparent, but you will still see it, right? So if you know that you don't want to see anything there, then there's no point creating anything there in the first place. So that's what this transparency is. It's between 0 and 90. So if you make it 90, it will be faint, but you still see. But now, as I'm changing this guy, I'm not seeing any effect. Are you seeing any effect to it? What I have at 0 is still the same thing as what I had at 90. And the reason is because a mode 2 is off. So that means my transparency tool should be activated. If you don't have transparency, you have to still come back to your customize. Then you have to look for your transparency. Make sure you check it. If you check it, checking this will not bring it on. It will only bring it down to this place. It will list it here. All right, very important. This is the transparency here. I probably turned it on before doing that. If I uncheck it now, you notice, just look at this. This checkerboard stuff will go away if I turn it off. If I turn transparency off, you notice it goes away. So the function of checking it here is just to bring it down so that you'll be able to access it. So if I click on this transparency, it brings it down. So that's the first thing you want to do. The next thing is you now need to activate it to make it on. So if I activate this guy, now transparency is on. Notice what happens. Are you seeing something? It's looking like it's going blurred, right? And it's reducing. So if I make it 90 and I check that, you notice the effect. It's really faint. If I select it and go back, bring it to 0, activate, you notice you can see it well. Hmm? All right. So don't worry, I'm almost done. Then that's what the transparency does. Then the next thing is setting your origin. So what the origin does is that you notice this is where you see this dot here. That's the origin of my hatch. That's where the hatch, that's the baseline of the hatch. So the hatch was drawn from this place and built up. All right. So if I want my hatch to be built up from this place and come down, I can change my origin by just clicking on set origin. Notice what happens. It tells me to pick the point. So I want this to be in the point of my origin. If I click here, and everything comes and start building up from here. All right. So we have that. That's what that does. The next thing you can also do is to colorize your brick. So we know that bricks usually have maybe orange background and the lines are maybe yellow. Correct. A deep brown and yellow. So we can come in and use this guy to do that. So we have the hatch pattern and then we have the background. Sorry, we have the hatch color and we have the background color. The hatch color are the line color. The background are those things. So let's go to the hatch color. We want this to be, let's say, yellow. So let's say this yellow. And for the background color, we said deep brown or deep red. So let's say this. Am I correct? So at least it still looks a little bit like Mario's this. Do you understand? So, but then you can still add color to your hatch. Do you understand? So if I want to, for instance, I want to make this one, what's it called? Glass pattern, sort of. I can go to my hatch, look for my glass, anything that I can use as glass. And glass is usually something like this, close to this, but then, okay, I think this close to this guy. So I'll set, right? So I'll select this as glass, fill in this shape. Now you notice the effect you now have. This looks too dense. I need to scale it up. So I'll come to the scale, let's bring it up to 1. Now the opacity will bring it down. We want to see this. So because this guy is glass. We want the background to be what? Blue. Sort of. So we'll come to this background color, give it a bluish tint. So let's say this blue. Okay, so I think this blue is fine, and the hatch should be white. And then you have that. So you can actually use this thing too. There are times where you don't want to add colors to your hatch. You just want to have the hatch and that's it. This is just me overdoing. If you understand. So, but then that is hatch. So we can also play with that, look for different hatch patterns and work with. So I'm going to stop this class here and give us classwork. We still have this is let's say 11:30. We have to want to leave it. So we can practice between this time and 1. Don't worry, it's there.